All right, Susan Michelle, this mic is all yours.
Hi, this is Susan Michel. I am here in Western Massachusetts. It is great to be here as always. I am the author of Surrender to Joy from Suicide to Serenity. I teach the transformational truth of A Course in Miracles, which I have been studying for almost 34 years now. And it is my GPS, God's plan for salvation. It is my personal GPS to peace, love, joy, and happiness. When I adhere to the principles that I study and I believe to be true, I know to be true, I feel good. And when I don't adhere to them, I don't feel so good. But I truly believe that this earth is a classroom and we are here to learn lessons. And our lessons are how to love unconditionally. So I'm grateful for this opportunity that I have chosen in this incarnation to learn love's deeper lessons. And my book, the introduction of my book starts out, my passion is God. God is love and joy and beauty. He is all that is good in the world. Everything else is our own miscreation. When we are filled with joy, we are connected to God. When we are not joyful, we have lost our connection to all that is real. This is my message. It can be clarified with three simple words: surrender to joy. There is nothing to find. All we need to do is surrender. There is nothing to find in the world because, as Course in Miracles says, there is no world. We are always creating our perception of the world by the thoughts we are focused upon in our own mind. And it's a very radical truth. It's not what the world teaches. The more I study A Course in Miracles, the more I learn to live the principles of A Course in Miracles, the more I understand what A Course in Miracles is teaching me. Now, lately, for whatever the reason, I am having a hard time first thing in the morning going from a sleeping state to a waking state. I'm sleeping good, I sleep at least 8 hours a night, not that much more. I sleep about 8 hours a night, so I sleep really well. But like first thing in the morning, getting out of bed, it's a challenging time for me. And I guess maybe I'm processing some old pain points and they're coming up in my dreams. But first thing in the morning is challenging for me. So what I started doing is I started affirming certain things to myself before I get out of bed. And an affirmation that I'm using lately is about innocence. I say, I am innocent, I am free, I am as God created me. And I keep affirming the fact that I'm innocent. And it is helpful because the opposite of innocence is guilt. That keeps me stuck in my ego, which is hell. When I can embody and own my own innocence, then I can feel the peace of God. So that affirmation is really helpful to me. In the morning, I just affirm that I am innocent. I own my innocence, and I do this before I get out of the bed and before I start listening to my Course in Miracles lesson. It's interesting because I found this old bookmark also recently, which I love, love, love. And this is, it has a Course in Miracles quote on it. And it says, "The peace of God is my one goal, the aim of all my living here, the end I seek, my purpose and my function and my life, while I abide where I am not at home. The peace of God is my one goal, the aim of all my living here." So whenever we think we are searching for something in the world, what we have to do is to remind ourselves that nothing in the world can make us happy. Nothing in the world can satisfy our soul's deepest yearnings. The only thing that can satisfy us is connecting to the peace of God. And that peace of God isn't something to be found outside of ourselves. That peace of God that we are truly searching for is a place within our own mind that we just have to recognize, that we just have to remember, that we just have to connect to. So, this is another affirmation that I think is extremely helpful. Now, today's lesson is lesson 335. If you go by if you start the workbook for students with lesson number 1 on January 1st, today is the 335th day of the year. So today's lesson is 335, and that lesson states, "I choose to see my brother's sinlessness." And, this morning, as usual, I got up and I listened to this lesson on YouTube by 3 different Course in Miracles teachers. It's nice to get different perspectives. They're all saying the same thing, using different words. And then it says, "Forgiveness is a choice. I never see my brother as he is, for that is far beyond perception. What I see in him is merely what I wish to see, because it stands for what I want to be the truth." So it's interesting how the mind works. When we see our brother's sinlessness, what is sinlessness? Sinlessness is innocence. So when we see our brother's innocence, we're able to feel the innocence within ourselves. And when we, on the other hand, see our brother's guilt, then we feel the guilt within ourselves. So I choose to see my brother's sinlessness. It is a way that we can connect to God right here and now, and we have a choice. We always have a choice. I know another discipline that I started doing in my morning meditations. First I listened to the lesson of the day on YouTube, and then I go into a 30-minute meditation. I start with the lesson of the day, and then I go to a place in my mind of receptivity where I do my best to hear what God is saying to me. And I know that I'm a part of God, so it's about listening to my own inner wisdom, but it's coming from a higher place. And it's really a beautiful daily discipline because God is always telling me how much He loves me. And then I visualize people in this world that I feel like I might still have a grievance towards, and I practice forgiving them. I see them in the body. I see them in their body form, and I hug them and I practice forgiving them. And there's just a series of people that I can recollect that triggered me, that I probably am holding on to grievances towards. So a lot of times in my morning meditation, I just work on forgiving them and releasing them and sending them love. And the question is, are they benefiting from my forgiveness? Maybe, maybe they are. I mean, if we're all energetically connected, maybe they can feel it. But the person who benefits the most from forgiving people that I'm holding grievances towards is me. I feel like when I am really angry at someone, it lowers my energy. It lowers my vibrational frequency. It hurts me. It's like that boomerang theory that I always talk about. When I get really angry and I project that anger onto outside sources, the boomerang, and maybe I'm going to feel better for a split second, but ultimately that boomerang comes back and hits me in the forehead. So it hurts me. The same is true with forgiveness. When I can forgive people that I'm holding animosity towards, it frees me. It uplifts my own energy. So I'm the one that reaps the benefits. I mean, God has but one son, and we're all part of that sonship. So I feel like to forgive someone else is the same as forgiving myself. There is no difference. When I hold on to grievances towards somebody else, I'm actually holding on to that guilt. And that keeps me apart from God. When I forgive, I find myself moving closer to God, which is the truth with the capital T of who and what I am. It's such a huge subject, forgiveness. It really is. And A Course in Miracles tells us that it is essential here on this earthly plane to learn to forgive everyone, because that is what is going to ultimately bring us back to heaven. Heaven is a state of mind that is just based on unconditional love. There is no darkness. And in order to get to that state of mind that is based on love, we need to forgive. We need to forgive our brother, and we need to forgive ourselves. I mean, thinking back, I grew up in a household that really had a lot of guilt. I mean, I guess a lot of people's childhood experiences have dysfunction. I use that word because I don't know exactly what other word to use, but most children grow up with dysfunction in their household. And I know that my parents had guilt about a lot, especially my father. they projected that guilt onto me. And that's what I learned. I learned to feel guilty about a lot of things. I remember growing up, and when I was real young, I used to enjoy food. I thought I was really a big eater. I thought it was just really yummy. And then I started to get chubby. I was a chubby little girl. And then my mother started limiting my food intake. And I got really upset about that because I remember my sister could have two ice cream sandwiches for dessert after dinner, and I could only have one ice cream sandwich after dinner for dessert. And I got really jealous, and I didn't like it. And then for whatever the reason, I started limiting my own food intake. So at first, my mother was the one out of love that started limiting my food intake because I was starting to get real chubby. And then after a while, I started limiting my own food intake. At a young age, I started asking the Easter Bunny for fruit instead of chocolate in my Easter basket. And then I started growing tall and I became very slender, but I was always very conscious, conscientious about the food I ate. And whenever I ate something that I considered to be unhealthy, I felt extremely guilty. So that was one outlet for my guilt. And then I uh, had an eating disorder for a number of years. I wouldn't so much purge the food, like throw up the food. But after I ate, I would just work out to an extreme to burn off the extra calories. So I think whenever we get obsessed with something, that's any kind of addiction is of the ego. It is based on guilt and it doesn't come from a loving place. So, food was one source of guilt. Sex was another source of guilt that I think I inherited from my father. I felt I always enjoyed dating boys, but I always felt extremely guilty if anything physical ever happened between us. So that was number two source of guilt. And this is how I grew up. I think that uh another block that I developed is perfectionism. When I was a young girl, I really wanted to look perfect. I wanted to be perfect. And I just became this ultimate perfectionist. And now, I know this is part of my darkness. I know this is part of my own ego's dynamics. I know this is what keeps me in hell. And I'm learning to, I guess, become aware of these unhealthy character traits and give them to God so I can release them. There is this wonderful author who I've learned so much from. His name is John Gray. He's the author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. He wrote this wonderful book, How to Get What You Want and Want What You Have. And he has in his book the feelings chart. I also have the same feelings chart in my book, Surrender to Joy. I asked him if I could put it in my own book, and he gave me permission to do so. So there are 12 blocks here in terms of being a whole and healthy person. And the eighth block that he lists is perfectionism. And perfectionism comes from the feeling of inadequacy. What is inadequacy? Inadequacy is the feeling that I am just not good enough. And then what John Gray writes is to release perfectionism. What you need to do is you need to step into the emotion that will help you to heal. And that healing emotion related to perfectionism is embarrassment. So, in order to release perfectionism, you need to allow yourself to step into the healing emotion of embarrassment. And that is going to help you release the feeling of inadequacy, which is just not being good enough. So I do believe that you need to own the pain in order to heal the pain. You know, that is a basic psychological principle. A Course in Miracles talks about bringing the darkness to the light. And I always read this one fabulous paragraph in A Course in Miracles. And it is about bringing our darkness to the light, you know, and it's really interesting too, because on one level, the darkness is not real. But on another level, I believe that in this lifetime, we all have these pain points in our unconscious mind. Even though they're not real, we need to allow them to surface in order to give them to the Holy Spirit so he can help us release them. And what A Course in Miracles says, this is in chapter 1, Roman numeral 4. The escape from darkness involves two stages. First, the recognition that darkness cannot hide. This step usually entails fear. Second, the recognition that there is nothing you want to hide, even if you could. This step brings escape from fear. When you have become willing to hide nothing, you will not only be willing to enter into communion, but will also understand peace and joy. And then when you skip down to the bottom of this particular page, Jesus writes, those who perceive and acknowledge that they have everything have no needs of any kind. So when we can remember how much we already have within ourselves, we don't need these things from the external world. When we can remember that we are whole and complete within ourselves, we don't go into the world from a place of lack. We go into the world from a place of fullness. We go into the world from a God-centered place. And that is how we were meant to live our life, you know, as a miracle worker. This is how we can be a conduit for God's divine love. This is how we can extend love to our brothers, knowing that we don't need anything from them, because all our needs have already been answered and all our needs have already been filled from God. So we don't walk into the world. We don't come into the world from a place of lack. We come into the world from a place of fullness. So those who perceive and acknowledge that they have everything have no needs of any kind. The purpose of the atonement is to restore everything to you, or rather, to restore it to your awareness. So the atonement is not restoring anything to us. This is just helping us, allowing us to remember that we all have everything that we need within us already. It's about remembering who we really are. You were given everything when you were created, just as everyone was. And then he goes on to say, the emptiness engendered by fear must be replaced by forgiveness. So when we can forgive our brother, when we can forgive ourselves, then we can access that divine place that we all have within us. And then we can become a conduit for God's divine love. Then we can become the miracle workers that we were born to be. But it's not about gaining anything. It's just about remembering who we really are. And forgiveness can help. Forgiveness can restore that memory to our awareness, because unforgiveness blocks love. Unforgiveness blocks our connection to God. Forgiveness restores true vision. Forgiveness is never, ever about letting the other person off the hook. Forgiveness is about letting ourselves off the hook. Forgiveness is about releasing what's untrue, and it's about remembering who we really are. You know, I was listening to a podcast, and this particular Course in Miracles teacher was saying that he believes that forgiveness starts with forgiving the other person. And I was listening to it, and I think that he's an amazing Course in Miracles teacher, amazing, amazing, amazing. However, I did not agree with that. I think that you can forgive the other person first if you want, but when we forgive ourselves, it's the same thing, because God has but one son and we're all part of the same sonship. So to reconnect to the truth of who we are, we can work on forgiving the person that we have a grievance against, you know, like I do in my morning meditation. I think of different people that I might still hold on to grievances towards, and I imagine hugging them. You know, that's a way of forgiving. But I also think self-forgiveness is equally important. So whether we choose to forgive others that we have not forgiven, that's all well and good. We can also work on self-forgiveness, forgiving ourselves, you know, because I think that there are a lot of mistakes that I hold myself responsible for. And I think it's really important to step into my own sense of innocence and forgive myself for my mistakes, because when I hold on to these mistakes, I just can't hear God's wisdom clearly. I know that I can't, you know? So it's a process, it's a journey, and ultimately it's all good. I'm so grateful for A Course in Miracles. You know, A Course in Miracles is teaching me the only thing that's important. And the only thing that's important is the love. As it says in the introduction to A Course in Miracles, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. And thank you for being here with me today. I greatly enjoy my time here. I love you all. And I will now return the microphone to Lynn. Thank you so much.